It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. And on the line with us this morning, Ron Rappaport. For a long time, a columnist with the Chicago Sun-Times. We've heard him on NPR's Weekend Edition as well. Long-time, very respected journalist, and especially in the city of Chicago. And his new book is Let's Play 2, The Legend of Mr. Cub, The Life of Ernie Banks. Let's say hello. Good morning.
Hi, Todd. How you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful, and good to have you with us. Here we are.
Great. I'm in Chicago, where it is just freezing.
Yeah. Well, we're in Pittsburgh, where it's just freezing too.
All right. Well, then we got that in common.
Yeah, it's April baseball, so it has to be. That's the way that it is. But you have such a wonderful topic in Ernie Banks, and it's such a shame that at this time of our history, we're beginning to forget about the baseball heroes of the 50s and the 60s as we look at today's heroes. But this is a guy worthy of remembering, isn't it?
Well, I think so, yeah. That was a great era. Roberto Clemente, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Mickey Mantle. A great era for hitters. But my problem with it is that Ernie tends to be forgotten when you mention all those great players. And I think the reason for it is that he never had his World Series moment. He never made a great catch, like Willie, or he never broke Babe Ruth's record like Hank. These were his buddies, his friends. So he was strictly never really seemed to break out of Chicago, and it's kind of a shame. Can I just tell you what a great baseball player Ernie Banks was?
Yeah.
Between 1955 and 1960, we're talking 6 seasons, Ernie had more home runs and more RBIs than everybody I just mentioned. More than Mays, more than Mantle, more than Aaron, more than Eddie Matthews, more than anybody in baseball. Now, those players all went to multiple World Series in those 6 seasons. When Ernie was the most productive power hitter in baseball, the Cubs finished a combined 123 games out of first place.
Oh, man. One of the great things I like about the book is the fact that Ernie's baseball career just seemed to be something he was destined for. He didn't play a lot of baseball growing up, did he?
Well, no. He went to Booker T. Washington High School, where they had a football team, and he played football. But there was no diamond, so he started playing softball in the city parks. And that's where he was discovered, playing softball, because he had, this wonderful swing, and he was very quick. He was just a natural for it. So he was finally sent around with a semi-pro team while he was still in high school around Texas. He grew up in Dallas, around Texas, and even to places like Nebraska and New Mexico. And that's where he honed his baseball talent. But no, he didn't start playing it until he was a teenager.
Yeah, that's amazing. And he really broke the mold for shortstops of his era, too. There weren't shortstops like Ernie Banks in that day.
No, he reinvented the position, and it was a little bit of a problem. There was one season where he hit more home runs than all the other shortstops in the National League combined. And baseball didn't know what to do about this. Shortstops were supposed to be little guys who bunt and stole and fielded, So here's this big home run hitter, and baseball was kind of bent out of shape about it, including, I might say, the Cubs. They kept bringing in other guys because they thought Ernie would have to go to third base or the outfield, power hitting positions. But Ernie just was a very good shortstop. He won a Gold Glove. He led the league in fielding percentage. He was real quick. Now later, when he had cartilage damage in his knees, he had to move to first base, and he ended up playing more games at first base in his career than at shortstop.
Yeah.
But he was a marvelous shortstop and very underrated because he was such a slugger.
We're talking with Ron Rappaport. The book is called Let's Play 2, The Legend of Mr. Cub, The Life of Ernie Banks. The era in which he played, he would not have been able to play had it not been for Jackie Robinson, who sort of paved the way for Ernie Banks' generation specifically. And we think of Ernie as having this wonderful sunny disposition because we've been told for all these years that was who he was. But he had to deal with some really rough stuff, didn't he?
Well, he did. I'll tell you that he came up to the Cubs in the tail end of the 1953 season. They brought up Gene Baker, a very fine infielder, to be with him so that he wouldn't be the only black player on the team. Now, Ernie grew up in a segregated, poor neighborhood in Dallas. He didn't really have a conversation with a white person till he went into the Army when he was 20 years old. Now, he leaves the Army. He goes back to the Kansas City Monarchs, where he has a good time, all right? He's with his buddies. They're traveling together. They stay in the same hotels. They eat in the same restaurants. Now, all of a sudden, he's in Chicago, and he's with all these white players, and they don't hang out at all except for at the ballpark. He and Gene Baker would go down to, the black section of town where they were staying in a hotel. Now, they get ready to go on their first road trip, okay? They go to St. Louis late in the season. They get off the bus, and all the black players go to the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. All the white players. The two, Gene and Ernie, are taken in a car to the black section of town where they're boarded in a rooming house. Nice house, nice guy, wanted to take good care of him. But that was sort of Ernie's introduction to baseball, is that he's separate. He's not part of the team in a way that he had been all his life, and particularly with the Monarchs playing for Buck O'Neill in the Negro Leagues. That was a real slap in the face.
Yeah. One of the great aspects of your book, Ron, is that you not only show us that sunny Ernie Banks, but you show us what was underneath all of that as well, and sort of peel away the layers. He was a conflicted soul in a lot of ways, wasn't he?
Well, he was, and the way he dealt with it, Todd, was to construct a mask that he could hide behind. Mm-hmm. He just invented a personality that fooled us all because, hey, happy, sunny, cheerful, let's play two, friendly confines. And we never dealt any deeper than that, and that was by Ernie's design. He just figured that if he could do that, he could keep the outside world outside. Well, as one of his sons told me, I had long conversations with Ernie's older sister, Edna, who's 90, just turned 90, living in Dallas, and his sons and one of his ex-wives, and a lot of the people who knew him well said that he constructed that image for himself, and it worked almost too well. It kept us all from penetrating, because when you live an image, when you construct an image, after a while you become a prisoner of it. You don't know how to break out. Ernie was married 4 times, and the marriages all ended terribly. Part of the reason is that he just couldn't relate. He couldn't talk to the people who were close to him. Mm-hmm. For instance, his second wife, Alois, who was the mother of his 3 children, if she was having trouble with the kids, hey, 2 teenage boys, right, they're growing up. Yeah. And Ernie, if there was a problem at home, he'd just get in the car and go away. Or she'd say, wait till your dad gets home, and he'd be on the road, and they'd say, what, in 2 weeks? I mean, can you imagine a woman having to deal with a situation like that? Well, that was the way Ernie dealt with life. He constructed this mask for himself. He hid behind it, and I think he hid behind it all too well.
Well, one of the things that really brings that out is in his relationship with Leo Durocher. There's one point of the book where you describe Ernie getting with reporters from other teams away from the Chicago reporters and sort of, you can picture him strolling across the field, sort of muttering to them and sort of opening up his whole personality to them in ways that shocked them. And then all of a sudden Ernie realizing what's going on and saying, but it's a great day, it's a sunny day, let's play some ball.
Right, and the reporters, actually those were Chicago reporters who he was friendly with and knew would respect his confidence. Now that was a different era. If somebody told you, I talked to George Langford, who was covering the team for the Tribune then, Chicago Tribune, and he said that he knew, without even Ernie telling him that this was off the record, that he would respect that confidence. But Ernie never said anything bad about Leo, who treated him terribly, just terribly. Called him Gramps and Grandpa and said, Mr. Cub, my ass, that kind of thing in front of the writers. And it was even worse in the locker rooms. He'd get on him, you old man, this and that and the other. You should have made that catch. My grandmother could have caught that ball. And Ernie, who his teammates loved and adored and respected, would look around the room and see his teammates looking at him with pity. But here's the thing. He never said a word till the day he died. Never said a word in public. Oh, Leo was just trying to motivate me. I was getting older. I needed a kick in the pants. To his friends and a little bit to me. And if he quietly, he would say that, damn Leo, and he doesn't think I can play and stuff. Fergie Jenkins tells me Leo tried to replace Ernie at first base 5 times. Let me count the names: John Bacadell, Bella, this guy, that guy, the other guy. Well, I looked it up, and he missed 4 of them. There were 9 different guys Leo tried to bring in to take over for Ernie at first base, and Ernie beat them all. Ended up playing 150 games every year.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. You mentioned no World Series for Ernie Banks, which leads us to the season that's being celebrated in New York this year, the 50th anniversary of the '69 Amazing Mets. But who was the team that was heartbreakingly kicked out of those playoffs or of the World Series by the Mets? That would be Ernie Banks and the Chicago Cubs that just had to break his heart.
Well, they don't call me Amazing Mets in Chicago. There's another adjective. No, you're going to be reading a lot about that because it is the 50th anniversary, and it does bring back all the heartbreak. You know, when I started writing about that season, I ended up with 3 chapters. It was just, the material is so rich. There was one chapter from the Cubs' point of view, you know, when they were riding high and town was on fire and they were ahead by 10 games, you know. And then one chapter from the Mets' point of view, catching up and beating them. And then one chapter about how it all went wrong. No, it was the great hole in Ernie's life. He tried to pretend that, well, it was one of those things, it was too bad. You know, sunny, cheerful Ernie. The truth is, Todd, it drove him crazy. Yeah. It drove him stark, raving mad. He would go to Cooperstown year after year. You know, the Hall of Famers would all gather, and these were his buddies, you know, his pals that he'd grown up with playing baseball. And they'd all sit around and talk about the good old days, and Ernie would look around the room and realize he was the only one there who hadn't played in a World Series. It really got to him. At one point, he told me he went to see a psychiatrist. It blew my mind. What could the psychiatrist tell him? You did your best, you know?
Yeah.
It really was a hole in his career. And again, that's why I think he's not remembered quite the way Willie and Hank and Mickey are.
Ron Rappaport is our guest, and we only have a couple of moments left with him. The book is Let's Play 2, The Legend of Mr. Cub, The Life of Ernie Banks. You actually worked with Ernie on what would have been an autobiography. Is that correct?
That's right. That's how this started. We were both living in California, and I had sat with him enough to know that there was a real guy who was living a real life beneath all those smiles. And I convinced him, I thought I convinced him, to sit down and write an autobiography. The idea was we were going to get down to it. And he was very open with me, very honest, talking about growing up in Dallas and talking about the Negro Leagues and talking about Leo and talking about his family life, how he was estranged from his children, wished he'd been a better father. Then he decided he didn't want to do it. Todd, it broke my heart. Oh. I mean, we were really on to something. When he died, I decided to see if I couldn't turn it into a biography. And I ended up talking to more than 100 people. I talked to his older sister, who was there the day he was born. And I talked to Regina Rice, his caretaker and friend, who was there the day he died, and to 100 people in between. And here's what was interesting, is that they all wanted to help me. They were all as frustrated at the fact that Ernie had hid his real nature and the suffering that he went through because of that, as I was. And so they really helped me understand him. And my hope is that by understanding him, seeing the man behind the mask, it'll make us, and the problems that he went through, racism and the rest of it, that if we know him, that we'll appreciate him and love him even more.
Well, we certainly do get to know him finally through your book, Let's Play 2. Ron Rappaport has been with us this morning. I want to thank you for spending some time with us. We could talk baseball for a long, long time, Ron.
Well, it's okay with me. This is the season for it. And I'm enjoying. I'm in Chicago now. We're, making some appearances on behalf of the book. I started in Dallas. Thanks for having me on. It's really been a great conversation.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.